Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Booked and Balanced podcast. I am super excited about this episode today. I'm excited about all the episodes I do, but I'm particularly excited about this one because I have Ryan Jacobs with me on the podcast. He's one of the most multifaceted people that I know: actor, business owner, fellow Enneagram 2, and dear friend of over about 10 years now. And I'm so excited
Crazy.
to chat about all things creative lifestyle and wellness with him. Ryan and I could talk for hours about these things, so we're going to try to keep it short for today, but I know that you're going to love him just as much as I do. So please, everybody, welcome Ryan. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Ryan. It is so good to be here, catch up, and you're in a new place. So I'm super excited about that for you too.
I appreciate you. Are you kidding me? I mean, like I would pay you to hang out with you for us to have conversations like this. So
uh,
it is my honor, my pleasure. I really appreciate you.
I really appreciate that. So the first thing that I like to start off the podcast episode, and Bellamy's trying to bark. I don't know what you're barking at, buddy, but now's not the time. I like to start out with one thing that you're loving right now. We call it love it, leave it. So one thing you're loving right now, one thing you're leaving. Let's start with the love it. Where are you at?
I am loving the concept that it is possible to design your life. I think my life currently is kind of bearing the fruits of many years of conscious curation.
Yep.
Obviously, there are tons of things that we cannot control, but I think we can control certain things that we don't necessarily think we can control. And I'm loving the concept that we have the ability to live lives that we enjoy and are um, sustainable and are built around a long-term goal rather than just centered around instant gratification, things like that. So I think curation is a big love it for me right now.
We wasted no time jumping into the deep stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I love that so
It's how we
much.
roll. It's
It's
how we
so how
roll.
we roll. I could not agree with you more. I think that we are in such an instant gratification society that it's so
Yeah.
hard, and no wonder it's so hard for people to stick to goals. It's because everything created nowadays is to like make things faster and easier, and like it's still true that the things that are really worth having are the things that are going to take a long time. And it's been so I almost just cussed on my podcast for the first time. Well, maybe not the first
Can
time.
can we cuss?
Yes, we can
Is that a
absolutely
thing?
cuss
Okay.
on the podcast. I
Hell
don't know
yeah.
why
Okay. Good.
I don't even know why like censored myself, but it's been so fucking cool to like watch your evolution since we've known each other for so long. Baby Brittany
Mm.
and Ryan going to class at Webster, me being an outsider and being welcomed with open arms by you and your brother, and a few other people in the class. But it's been so cool. You've busted your ass, and I couldn't think of anybody any more deserving than you reaping the benefits of your rewards right now. So it's so cool to hear that.
Thanks. I appreciate you saying that. It was funny because I was just thinking about this the other day. Uh, all of the people that I feel like you and I have in our lives now that we've really surrounded ourselves with share this ambition, this vision, this concept that we are able to build our lives in a way that might be a little more non-traditional. We're both entrepreneurs, we're both artists at the same time. Um, and I think it matters. I think it matters. You and I have obviously kept in contact for so long and we talk about this stuff constantly.
Mhm.
But I think having those other voices in your life that are sharing the experience, they're in the arena with you. What is the Brene Brown thing about like don't take advice from people who are not in the arena with you?
Yep.
I think the fact that we have people in the arena with us makes a world of difference. I know it has made a world of difference for me in pursuing the things that I am pursuing, having people like you in my life, being able to push me to reflect back to me like, hey, you're actually doing better than you might think you are.
Yeah.
So it does take a village to accomplish these things.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on me that I think you and I are very lucky to have each other and other people in our lives that share that vision and encourage us and push us.
Yeah. The amount of times I cry just thinking about how I've gotten to where I've gotten because of just like little things along the way, like my roommate watching my dog for a month and a half while I was in LA,
Yeah.
and like people donating money for me to go do something or whatever. It's just like sometimes my gratitude is overwhelming. So I couldn't agree more with all of what you just said. So that's what you're loving. What are you leaving right now?
Right now, it's funny because I feel like I've been talking to a lot of my clients about this recently. I am leaving the concept that you have to take up less space.
Hmm.
Uh, I see it a lot specifically in New York, just largely because of the amount of people. Everyone walks down the street and they try to make themselves as small as possible. And of course, you and I are in the movement business, right? And so I think we notice it in a way that might, not occur to some other folks because it's our bread and butter. It's what we do. But I think that applies to a lot of things. Walking into a space, whether it's an audition or an interview or any sort of space that you might feel uncomfortable or that you don't hold power in, we will take up less space. We will actually unconsciously diminish the amount of space we take up. And I'm kind of done with that. I think it is a waste of energy because it actually takes energy to diminish ourselves, believe it or not. It seems like it takes less energy to be smaller. It doesn't. We take up the amount of space that we take up as human beings. And so, yeah, I think I'm just at a point in my life that I'm done with that. I think it's bullshit.
Why do you think people, like when you see people walking down the street in New York, why do you think they make themselves smaller like that? That's so interesting. I've never thought of that before. But now when I'm like just like playing
Yeah.
back, like walking down the street, how often people are like scrunched in or hunched over or
Hmm.
got their hood up or like something like that. Like that's so interesting.
Earbuds in,
Yeah. Oh, that was
I mean,
me. I was the girl that would wear earbuds without playing anything because I just didn't want people to talk to me,
yeah.
which is
Well,
crazy.
I do think to a certain extent it is a necessary defense mechanism, and especially in a place where you're just overstimulated like that constantly, right?
Yes.
So I do think there is a time and place for it, but I would also posit that maybe there's a way to cut out some of that noise without actually taking up less space. I think some of it is just that people they don't want confrontation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to have to ask someone to move out of my way. Excuse me, could you please step over so I can step into the subway car? I don't want to have to even engage with that person, so I'm just going to try to squeeze into
Like
the tightest
squeeze
space
in. Yeah.
possible.
Just like
Yeah, yeah.
punch up and squeeze in.
Um, and I will say I do. This may sound cliche, but I think it is very true. I see it more from women, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and I see it also more from people of color.
Yeah.
As a white guy, like I can walk down the street if there's a policeman or whatever. I don't have to
Fucking white
fear for my
guys.
safety. Yeah, I know, the worst. Hate those dudes. Um, so a lot of my students that I teach, fitness classes to, I will have them do exercises that require them to take up as much space as possible. And it's interesting because I see it is deeply uncomfortable for a lot of the female identifying people in my classes,
Mm.
just not used to it, right? Uh, and unfortunately, I think society is really terrible to
Yes.
women in so many ways that there's this concept that you can't take up space. You can't be a powerful person.
Yeah.
Um, but then on the flip side of that, you think about it, people who do take up space just naturally,
Mhm.
they're like so much more confident. They seem so much more attractive. Those are the people you want to work with. Those are the people you want to hang out with, right? They're just like comfortable taking up space. So all of that to say, I think I'm at an age. I'm so old. We're so old, Brittany. We're,
We are in our
we're,
prime, baby.
yes.
We are in our
Um,
prime. We are ditching the I don't give a fuck
Yes.
we're obtaining the I don't give a fuck attitude. We're caring
Yes.
less about what people think, and
We're
we're
taking up space.
taking up space, and we
Yes.
are acknowledging our strengths and acknowledging our weaknesses as an ability to learn and grow. We're in our prime. We're not too old or so old. We're in our prime. These
I
are the best
I
years of our life.
I love how you think. Yes. So yeah, I'm done. I'm done not taking up the space that I as a human being deserve.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's so interesting to me, and this just goes to show that you just like never really know what is going on in someone's head, no matter how like confident they present themselves. Because I've never thought of you as someone who hasn't taken up space. So it's so interesting
Hmm.
to me to hear you say that you're like done with that, considering that
Yeah.
had never thought of you being someone. But like when you were talking about you know, people taking up more space are just naturally more confident and more attractive. It, like that's not to say that those people don't have their struggles or their insecurities um on their own. It's just that they know how, somehow they've learned how to manage them a little bit better
Yeah.
maybe than somebody who has.
Right.
And those things,
I,
just like fitness and trying to create new habits with fitness and nutrition and stuff like that, those things come from those thought patterns that you have that you just like naturally lean into, like making yourself smaller and stuff like that. Those things come from
mhm.
years and years and years of societal, environmental, and just like emotional thought patterns around how you view yourself. So they're
Yeah.
automatic now. Like anytime you get into a situation that's uncomfortable, or anytime you go somewhere where you might feel inferior, you have an automatic trigger to how you present yourself because of years and years and years of these things. So I find that interesting too.
How would you describe your own journey in finding that? Because if I think back to when you and I first met, I mean, you've always been very good at, meeting people and even maybe when you didn't feel extroverted, you can turn it on. That's a very useful tool as an entrepreneur or an actor.
Yeah.
But still, you have, as I've known you, you have gone from someone who maybe didn't fully take up the space that you wanted or deserved. And now you are so good at it.
Yeah.
What tools enabled you to get there, do you think?
Therapy.
Therapy. Yeah, that's a
Therapy,
big
but
one.
full disclosure, I honestly, I think I still struggle with it every single day. I think every
Hmm.
single day is still a fight with, particularly with business and with coaching.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome. Acting has come a long way because I've been at it for so long that I have just finally ingrained in my head that like 90% of the time when I don't get a job or I don't get an opportunity or something like that, it's not my fault. It's not something that I have had control over, and that has brought me so much peace in my acting career. The other thing that's brought me peace in my acting career is doing something outside of my acting career. So that is
Mm,
this
yeah.
business, this coaching business has alleviated a lot of like that chokehold that I had on acting for so long, because I have something else that I'm really passionate about that I love to focus on, to take my energy. So when I audition and I submit an audition, I can like submit it and forget it. Like I don't
Mm,
loom over it anymore because I'm like, okay, I submitted my audition. When am I going to hear from them again? I'm like, no, I have other shit to do. Like I cannot just fuck
yeah.
around. I have to
Right.
get going. So I would say that my ability to I think acting has just conditioned me to like have a high tolerance for stress, which is, those of you listening, is not always a good thing. I'm still learning what my stress signals are. I'm learning
Mm,
that one of my stress signals is like being really overly picky about how the environment around me looks in terms of cleanliness. If I'm so hyper fixated on it, I'm probably stressed in some way or another. But it's a work in progress every single day. I think that it really has just come from being able to over a lot of time and showing up for myself when I didn't want to, and pushing past the, well, I don't want to do this today, but if I don't do this and this is going to happen or this isn't going to happen, pushing past all of that and continuing to show up has just over time built trust in myself that like everything is going to work out exactly as it's meant to. And so that just kind of releases pressure. But the short answer is therapy.
Yeah, amen. Me too.
What
It's
about you?
really interesting. I think about this a lot, and I'm sure you talk about this stuff with your clients. And I've heard you kind of discuss it on social media, things like that. The difference between motivation and a habit,
Hmm.
right? Is what we always talk about, especially in the fitness industry, motivation, you gotta just go balls to the wall all the time. It's the David Goggins BS, right?
Hmm.
And of course, there's so many psychological studies that show that actually the most effective way of sticking with something is building a habit. It just becomes what you do. And even on the days when you are not motivated,
Hmm.
because you have built the habit, you're going to do it regardless, right?
Yep.
And I think all those things that you're talking about, therapy, this has certainly been the case for me. Therapy, surrounding yourself with good people, you know, having other things that you're passionate about, it builds a habit.
Hmm.
It actually stops becoming about, oh, before I walk into an audition, I'm gonna hype myself up, right? Like I'm great, I'm talented, I'm good look, whatever it is. You actually just build a habit of taking up space,
Hmm.
right? So even when you feel like you don't want to, even when you feel like you don't have the motivation or the confidence, whatever it is, to do that, to act that way, it's
Hmm.
a habit.
Yep. It's automatic.
And it's automatic. You just go, but this is what I do. I take up space.
It's
Even if
rewiring
internally
your
we're,
brain, it's
yeah, yeah.
rewiring. Over time, you actually physically, scientifically rewire your psychological thoughts around these things.
I've been thinking a lot about the competency spectrum, the four levels of competency,
Yep.
right? So I'm sure you've talked about this on a podcast at some point, but just to
We're
go
only
over
three
it.
episodes in, so
Oh,
probably.
okay. So you will at some point. So for anyone who's not familiar with the competency spectrum, there's kind of four levels of competency, right? The first one is unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know,
Hmm.
right? So say there's a language that is out there that you don't know exists. How could you possibly learn the language if you don't know it exists,
Right.
right? The next level of competency is conscious incompetence.
Mm.
I am aware of the language. I don't know it, but I know it exists,
Mm.
right? So I know that I am not competent at it. The hardest transition is between conscious incompetence and conscious competence, which
Mm.
is the next step,
Mm.
meaning I know it if I think about it, right? So for what we were talking about previously, this would be a case where I can take up space if I consciously think about taking up space,
Mhm.
right? And by the way, to get from all of these levels to the next level of competence, it's just repetition.
Mhm.
There's so many studies that it's like you just have to do it over and over
Yeah.
and over again, right? And the
Has to be
final level of
uncomfortable at
competence,
first, and you have to just push through
yeah,
it.
you have to. Another way of saying it is like being bad. You have to be bad before you're good, right? Um, and the final level of competence is unconscious competence. I can take up space without having to think about it because it's a habit,
Yep.
because I've done it so many times that it's just what I do when I walk into a room or, whatever. And so moving through those four levels of competence just requires a lot of, I think for both of us, years
Yeah.
of putting in the reps. You're going to
I
therapy.
think I faked it
You're,
till I made it, like, for a
oh yeah,
long time. Not even really knowing
100%.
it. Yeah. I think I thought
Um,
that I was really confident for a long time, and then I, like, got out of college, and I was like, "Oh, wait. There's so
oh
much I
wait.
don't know."
And
I'm
then,
not
something,
naturally that
well,
confident. I might seem confident on the outside, but yeah.
yeah, well, and
Going on in
inevitably
there.
there are road bumps, right? Where
Yeah.
progress is not linear.
Nope.
There's going to be
Not at
moments where
all.
you fall off or you don't feel as confident or whatever it is. But um, anyway, it's a long way of answering your question. I think for me, it has just been a shit ton of repetition.
Yeah.
And I'm still putting in those reps
Yep.
today. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like I still, because you never know. You go into a new environment, you may be super comfortable in an audition room
Mhm.
for film and TV,
Mhm.
but you haven't been in a musical theater audition for a long time, and all of a sudden you walk in there and you're like, what the hell am I doing?
I have
This
to
feels
sing.
so weird. Yeah, what? Um, I was asked to I was in a callback a couple of weeks ago, and I was asked to sight read. Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I haven't tried to sight read
Oh my
anything
gosh.
since
That's
college.
crazy.
And not only did I have to sight read it, it was freaking high. Like it was hard to sing. And I came out of there and I felt like shit. I was like, oh man, I just bombed that.
Mhm.
Like I just lost, it's funny how we do these things. I just lost that job. Like it wasn't
Mhm.
mine to begin with, you
Right.
know. Um, I booked it.
Of course you did.
It's crazy, right? But I was I had done enough of those type of auditions where all this was in my head. I don't think they saw any of it,
Mhm.
you know. They literally asked me to sight read it, and internally I went, fuck. Outwardly, I said, let's give it
Sure.
a shot.
Let's do it.
Let's try it. Um,
And
so
honestly, it was
anyway,
probably just a test of like how you handled something like that. They probably could give two shits about how you actually did the song, and then they just really wanted to see
maybe
your character came out loud and proud in that moment. So I'm sure that that
I
had
love those moments.
I'm sure that had to do with beyond the fact that you're just talented and you deserve the job, but also your character probably came out in that moment and they were like, oh, this guy's not gonna like be a shitstorm to work with for however long you're gonna work with it.
When we ask him to jump, he'll say how high.
Oh,
Yeah,
great. To
but
an
is
extent.
it
To an
to an extent?
extent.
Yes, yes,
We
yes.
have boundaries now. We're old.
Yes, we
We have
wait. You
boundaries
just
now.
said we weren't old.
We are
I thought.
old,
I thought. Oh, okay.
but
I
it's
feel
not
old
bad.
sometimes.
It just is what it is.
It. We're experienced.
We are experienced. So I want to talk a little bit about something that I don't think I've ever asked you. I think because we both got into the personal training certification bubble at the same
Yeah.
time when the pandemic hit.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever asked you specifically what inspired you to want to do that. I don't know if I've ever asked you that. So, why
Oh,
did you go into starting your fitness stuff in your business?
that's a great question. I got to give credit where credit is due. Austin, my brother, who you also know, uh, had brought it up. He was like, "Man, I think I might do this." Um, this might be a way of. We had both wanted to get out of the service industry
Mhm.
for many years. Service industry is great, but as anyone who has worked in it knows, it's a lot. It's hard.
Kinda
It's
got a
hard on your
tax there.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not something that, I wanted to do forever. And so he brought it up and I was like, "Oh, well, how would you feel if I did it with you? We could be study partners, just be easier."
Mhm.
And he said, "Okay, yeah, sure." So it was really him that brought it up first. And then I got certified. And the funny thing about any of those certifications is you come out and they tell you, oh, you know everything you need to know to do this professionally. And then you start doing it and you realize that you don't know shit.
Nothing. You don't
You
know
don't know anything. Um, and I think there's also a big issue with certifications in the fitness world because very few of them are experiential,
right. Yeah, I agree.
right? It's like nobody saw me squat,
Nope.
you know? And so I came out and I had to kind of learn the way that everybody learns, which is you make a lot of mistakes, you surround yourself hopefully with people who are way more experienced and smarter than you are, which I was very lucky to have. And years later, here we are, you know. So yeah, long story short, Austin was the inciting incident, as we
Mhm.
say. So I can blame him for that.
Yeah. So you feel like the main inspiration outside of your brother doing it was that you just wanted to get out of the service industry and do something else, or was there anything else in particular that was inspiring you to do it?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it. I have movement's been a huge part of my life since I first started walking. I've always been very active. I played sports growing up, and um, it really, to be completely honest, what when he brought it up, what really inspired me to actually follow through and then build a business around it was in 2019, I was doing a show
Mm-hmm.
and I dislocated my left shoulder, tore my anterior labrum,
Mm-hmm.
uh, was in, PT and other rehab protocols for like 2 years, which
Mm-hmm.
is ridiculous. Was told I needed surgery, thankfully avoided surgery because I had a really great PT.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, oh, I can help other people do what this PT helped me do. And that's really how I ended up getting into functional strength training rather than, the bodybuilding world or something like that. So, um, as soon as Austin brought it up and I started kind of really getting into it, I realized, oh, this is a way that I can give others what was given to me,
Yeah.
which was hope, right?
Yeah.
When I first got injured, I was basically told you'll never be able to lift another human being in the air, which as an actor is kind of essential, like lifts are a pretty big part of musical theater. I couldn't lift my arm over 90 degrees,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I remember
for
that.
many, many months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like what, 8, 10 months, something like that. And yeah, it was a really kind of tough time, even though, in many ways I was very privileged to not be injured in a more intense way.
Right.
Um, but when you are used to kind of having to work at a more elite level, right? That's what we as performers are asked to do.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to do this. And not only do you have to do this, you have to do it 8 times a week
Yeah.
or sometimes 9 times a week. um, our needs are greater. My standard for myself is higher because of that. And so it was a really tough time and I wanted to help others in the way that I had been helped. So that's how I ended up kind of really getting into what is now my primary focus, functional strength training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and Austin was kind of the gateway. He showed me like, oh, you could actually monetize this, And of course, you've done the same thing. It has also given me massive amounts of freedom.
Yes. Yeah.
Working for yourself is freaking hard. Anyone who tells you differently has never worked for themselves.
It's so hard. It's I cry one day from like yesterday. I felt like I had a really great day in business, and then the next day you could be like crying because you're like, I'm never gonna get to where I want to be. It's like so hard. It's so fucking hard.
It is I think something that is not for everybody and not in like a
No, no, not at
derogatory
all.
sense, but it's a big risk.
Not a lot of people
There's
would
a lot of risk.
want. Yeah, not a lot of
Yeah.
people would want to put in the time and energy and effort it takes to get to where it's like actually functional and it's like doing the thing you wanted it to do the whole time, you know?
Yeah. So you started studying in the summer of 2020,
Yep.
similar to me?
Yep.
Okay. What for you was the inspiring
Honestly,
kind of inciting incident?
yeah. Honestly, so in 2019, I also had like a revelation of I booked my first big theme park contract. I did that out in Pittsburgh, and that was 4 months, and all I had time to do was like work out and go to work. I worked 6 days a week. I had one day off a week, and that day was basically spent like getting groceries and working out and like doing stuff like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I that was the transition. That summer was a transition for me where I went from like working out and eating and stuff to to be smaller to working out and eating to feel more confident and strong. And
Mm,
that was a big mindset shift, and I started to see the results that I'd wanted to see all along, like losing a little more fat and toning up and just like building strength in general and being able to sustain that 6 day a week theme park schedule where I was like outside in the 100-degree Pittsburgh heat singing and dancing for like 8 hours a day, like doing 5 to 6 shows a day. Like that required, like you were mentioning, an elite level of physical and mental and emotional just being able to sustain that. And I really think that if I hadn't been working out the way I was working out in a way that's supported that, I don't know that I would have had as much success with that contract as I did. I feel like I came out a completely different performer, not only as like a singer and a performer, but like as a being, as a human. And so from
Yeah.
there, I always knew that I was going to pursue the personal training certification because like I could help other people do this, especially women. I could help other women get out of this like I got to be smaller mindset and get into this. I want to be stronger, because that's the stuff that you do to get stronger is actually the stuff you're going to also do to get the results you want, like the fat loss and the
Hmm.
toning and stuff like that. But I'm just trying to help people rewire their thoughts to get to their results, and that is by training and eating to get stronger, not smaller. I
100%.
always knew that I was going to be doing that, but I didn't know it was going to come as fast as it did with the pandemic. And then honestly, it was purely because I had nothing else to do that I was like, okay, well, I guess
Hmm.
I'll do this now. So I did that, and like I think we both passed our certifications around the same time. I think you guys did it like a couple weeks before me.
Yeah, July or
Before the
August, something
yeah,
like that.
mine was August, and I opened my doors very shortly after I got the certification. But honestly, other than wanting to help other people that had have similar experiences to me of when I first started doing everything because I felt like I needed to look a certain way to get jobs or book more work or anything like that. Beyond that was truly because I wanted a way that I could be in control of my time, my schedule, my life, because
Yeah.
I have always known that acting was the thing I was meant to do without a doubt. There's been zero uncertainty with that, but I haven't always known how I was going to get to it. And I knew that what I was doing at the time, which was like hopping from like part-time gig to part-time gig, or sometimes working multiple part-time gigs, or sometimes working temp agencies. You remember that working the US
Oh,
Open? You remember
dear
working the US Open?
God.
Yeah, doing that, I knew that that wasn't going to be sustainable. As much as I'm someone who loves like different things, and that's part of the reason why I love acting, I knew that like my life outside of acting needed to be a little bit more stable. And not
Yeah,
to say that business ownership has not been unstable, but it's at least been constant and work that I can focus on and something I also really enjoy doing. I've honestly been really lucky to have a lot of side jobs that I enjoy. Like I haven't really been somewhere where I like hate my life, like maybe toward the end of my time at Waffle House.
mm,
But
I get that.
yeah, you're right. But other than that, I've pretty much enjoyed all the side jobs I've had. But the one thing I never enjoyed was being able to, or not being able to have control of my own time to
Yeah,
audition, to have to ask for permission to take a gig, to like do X, Y, and Z. And now, because of my business, even though it's still very much growing and it's not anywhere near where I want it to be, it is doing just that. And I have to like kind of zoom out sometimes and be like, oh, this is this is doing exactly what it was meant to do when I first started it, and that is to give me nearly complete and utter control over every aspect of my life. And that
yeah,
is the main reason why it exists. The very close secondary reason is because I really believe that when you focus on things outside of your life, and this is why my coaching has become very holistic, like yes, it's fitness and nutrition coaching, but I believe that all of this stuff, like you were talking about your students in your classes, like you teaching them to take up space is not only going to be in the studio, but it's going to infiltrate every other aspect of their life. And that's
100%.
that's why the foundation for me is fitness, but it kind of goes out into everything else without you even knowing it until one day you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I feel different, you know?
Those are the most, do you have like a time you can think of where you literally saw a client make the connection between the work you're doing in the gym and their life? Can you think of times like I have specific instances where I've seen it happen. It is the most joyous, satisfying thing that as a coach I think you can watch.
Yeah.
Do you have like specific things you can think of?
I think that mine's a little harder since everything is online for me. It's a
Sure.
little harder for me, but I have received messages where, even if somebody like when somebody has graduated from a program of mine, like even if somebody wasn't exactly where they thought they wanted to be by the end of the 4 or 6 months, however long they were with me,
Yeah.
almost always people have discovered something about the work we did together and how it impacts every other area of their life, and they're able to kind of, they have that awareness of that now, and so they're able to take it out into the world. And when they notice, previous versions of themselves pop up, they're able to kind of combat that with the new version of the better version of themselves. Not that the version of themselves before was bad by any means, but they
Yeah.
just have unlocked new tools and new territory for how they view themselves. So I wouldn't say that I have a very specific ideas in mind, um, but I've definitely had moments on coaching calls where they're like,
Yeah.
we're not only doing this for our body, but like we're also doing this because the things that I want in life are going to require a higher level of myself, and I know I'm capable of that now. Maybe I didn't before, which is
Yeah.
really really powerful. And honestly, those, just like when you audition and you get rejected, sometimes it can feel like that as a coach when you're like trying to help people, and sometimes they maybe aren't on top of everything all the time, and it's our place to like help them figure out why they're not doing that right. Sometimes it can feel like you're taking it personal and you're like, what am I doing wrong as the coach? Like,
Hmm.
why are these clients like not being able to adhere to the thing that I've given them? And then they have like a breakthrough moment and you're like, this is why I push through. This is why we push through. This is why you push through. We we've auditioned 100 times to book this one job because it proves to us that we can do it. And so I think that it's a long game too on that as well.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah, it's going back to that concept we were talking about kind of at the beginning of our conversation about curating
Yep.
your life, you know. Um, Same thing, you've done with your business is you have played the long game and you've said, here's the kind of life I want to live. And you have taken steps that have paid off not over a couple months, but over years,
Yeah.
you know, to make that happen. And the same thing, any of our clients do. It's a we're trying to help them live better lives. It's not about, what how much you can deadlift. You know,
No,
at
it's
the end of
really
the day,
not. It's cool as fuck though if you can deadlift
oh,
your
of
like your
course,
body weight and then some, but like it's
you
really
feel
not.
freaking awesome.
Ultimately, it's not about that at all. It is so much bigger than you could. It's so much bigger than that bar and plates. Like it's so much
Yeah.
bigger than
At the end of the day, I have to tell my, you know, students all the time. What were we working on? Front squats. I teach a class once a week where the focus, the strength, block of the workout is barbell front squats.
that.
And there was somebody who was like struggling to get from, I think they had worked on a Zercher for a while and they were trying to get from the Zercher to the front squat and, was just really frustrated. And I walked over to her and I was like, hey, I see your frustration and, I know you've worked really hard and we'll get there. But take a second. Does front squatting matter? Like if you get from the Zercher to the front squat or you don't, does it matter in your life? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Are you somehow a better person because you can do a full front squat than sticking with Zerchers?
Yes,
No.
absolutely. Oh, just kidding.
Oh, never mind. Whoops, we'll
Uh,
edit that out.
the irony is that
Um,
I don't do any of those.
yeah, but like if you're getting the benefit, then who cares?
Yep.
Right? The benefit is stimulus. We need you to be having a level of intensity that gives you stimulus that forces adaptation. If and this is life in general.
Yep.
If you are receiving the stimulus through intensity that is forcing adaptation, then who the fuck cares how the stimulus is accomplished?
Right.
It doesn't matter. Which is a really hard thing as a coach to say because that's our job, is teaching
Yeah.
people how to do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, what we do, it's just to give stimulus. It's just to force adaptation. That's it.
Yep.
Um,
And
if
to
the most,
put people outside of their comfort zone, because their
yeah,
comfort zone is exactly why wherever they're at, why they've come to you to begin with. They've
100%.
become the habits they have now have become automatic. And so now we are rewiring full circle back to full circle. So that kind of brings me to my next question then, in terms of, we've been talking a lot about our clients and like what we do with our clients, but I want to know what it is about you and what you do that helps you, because not only being a business owner, but being an actor too, that's like double business ownership. Like,
Yeah.
you are, I mean, obviously you have people behind you, you have a team behind you, people supporting you, but how do you find sustainability in your life and career when it comes to this shit?
Um, that's a great question. And I don't have all of the answers yet. This is a constant process, as you know.
Mhm.
Um, but I do have some of them. So my cycle used to be every 6 months, I would reach bucket mode, which really is just burnout,
Burnout,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. I would get to a point where it became hard for me to care about my work because I was so tired. I was so worn out. I had nothing to give. My glass was empty,
Yep.
right? There was nothing left. And at some point I went, hey, this is a pattern. Like I can't keep doing this. And I don't know if you remember, there was was it 2022 to 2023? I spent basically like a year. I didn't really go to a whole lot of social gatherings. I did some, but it wasn't nearly as much as I normally do. Um, I didn't date, I didn't do any of that stuff because I needed to kind of look inward and figure this out because it is not sustainable. Talking about sustainability, right?
Yeah.
And what I have discovered is a couple of things. One, only you can determine and have the right to determine, to be honest, what a good life looks like,
Hmm.
right? I used to have this concept in my head that if it was, it's a Tuesday, right? We're recording this on a Tuesday. This is my day off. And now I am not always successful at it, but I generally take 3 days off a week.
Hmm.
I felt so guilty about that for so long. I was
Same.
like,
I understand.
you lazy lil insert expletive here. you know, uh, and eventually I realized, wait a second, only I get to determine what is successful and what is not, right?
Yep.
I have I'm very lucky. My business supports me. I'm able to audition in between things. I don't have to work 7 days a week like I used to for many, many years. Now, the days that I do work are crazy busy. I often have 11, 12, 13-hour days, but I only do that a couple days a week, right?
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I learned. Another thing I have done is you mentioned it, I have really curated a support network.
Hmm.
I created the Giving Project, right, which you're also a part of, which is awesome. And sometime we'll do another community class. Remind me about that.
Okay.
But having other people who, as we were talking about earlier, are in the arena and can remind you, like, hey, you're doing okay, right? Just the fact that you're in business after 2 years is better than
Yeah.
what are the statistics, like 98% of small businesses,
Yeah.
right? Um, just the fact that you are making money as an actor. Holy hell.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
So few people.
We play dress up for pretend,
Yeah.
for
And we
real.
make money.
Yeah, we make money.
That's
That's so cool.
crazy.
So cool.
Like
That's so
we're
job.
both working actors. That is the so few people have that privilege, you
Yeah.
know? So having people that kind of, are in the arena, understand what you're going through, and are willing to kind of hold a mirror up to you and say, "Hey, you're doing okay." And then I think, finally for me is really honing in on what I need as a person.
Mhm.
I just moved to this small town in the Hudson Valley, north of New York City. Uh, Not a single person other than probably my close circle, like my mom, my brother, you were very encouraging about this. Uh, Other people in my life, they were the only people who were like, that's an awesome idea. Everybody else was like, why the fuck would you do that? You're literally moving away from your business, you're moving away from auditions, right? That is crazy. But I had identified that living in the woods, living with, outdoor space is essential to my well-being.
Yeah.
It's my happy place. It enables me to gain perspective. Um, and so I did it anyway, even though tons of people said that's a terrible idea. And I'm still figuring it out. It's pretty new, but uh, so far it's going really well. So identifying those things that actually are important to my life that enable me to recharge, to create a sustainable life for myself that enables me to have two careers.
Yep.
And on those days when your small business is in crisis, which, as you know, happens more often than any of us talk about,
Ugh.
like there's always some fire to put out, and we don't have an HR department to go talk to or a COO to go talk to, or it's all us. That's it. So it gives me energy to be able to do that. I know you are taking steps like that too, right? You are moving to a place
Mhm.
that on paper, a lot of people have told you, like, I don't know about this. What do you think? But you know that it is essential to your well-being, and that will pay off. I'm a living, breathing example of that. It will pay off on even on paper. If it seems like, oh man, this is how am I going to make this work? Whatever it is, if it's important to you, if it actually adds a large amount of value to your life, you will figure that shit out,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
you know? So I think those three things just off the top of my head have really made a difference for me. And I haven't had one of those breakdowns in a while, where every 6 months I would just like fall apart.
I guess that explains why, like, every 6 months I would hear about you going on a road trip again.
uh yeah, you caught me. That was my emergency like infusion
Get
of
me
of
the
life
fuck out of
force.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like
Yeah.
I just need to leave everything behind. And to be honest, for me, moving to the woods, a large reason I discovered that I needed to be in that environment, um, was I asked myself the question, how do I bring those road trips into my life?
Yeah.
Because I can't always just
Right.
leave,
Right.
you
Not
know.
yet you can't, but
Not yet. Well, and also, when you have ambition and
yeah.
are trying to build something and go somewhere, you can't. You got to stay in it, you
I've
know?
really been loving this a friend of mine who I'm in the membership with. Her name is Sam Valentine, and she talks about blooming
That's
where you're
a great
planted.
name, by the way.
Super great name. She's
That's a
so great.
phenomenal actor.
She runs the One Broke Actress
Nice.
podcast and stuff, and
Oh, nice,
she's
nice.
also one of the co-mentors with Gabrielle Bendloss in the membership, which is an acting community that I'm a part of online. I actually just met them for the first time. I drove down to Atlanta last week and got to
So
meet them in
cool.
person, and it was one of the other things where I could just take a random road trip to go
Just
meet
go.
some amazing people because of my curation of my life is gone
Hmm.
so far. Those are the moments where I'm like, I'm so grateful for all the moments that I've cried and wanted to quit and like all these things. Um, but she talks about blooming where you're planted, and I feel like I've been really bad at that. I've been really bad at that for a really long time because I've always just
Mm,
felt like, okay, I'm hustle, hustle, hustle. And I get to the point where I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor, and then I'm like, okay, now I gotta hustle again. I gotta hustle again. I
yeah.
gotta jump into the
Yeah.
next, what's the next level up, like kind of thing, instead of just like getting to a point where I'm like, okay, cool, I'm comfortable. I'm chilling. I mean, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but like I could like hang out. And that was me before I decided to not move to LA. I was gonna move to LA, and that obviously would have been its own new version of hustle. But instead I'm gonna stay in St. Louis because I want to enjoy the fruits of my labor for a little while. And I think that one of the things you learn as you get older, but also as you gain experience and you, like you were saying, figure out what is essential to your well-being as human that then can translate into everything, business, art, whatever, is just like taking the intentional time to learn those things about
Yeah.
yourself and to know those things about yourself so that then you can make informed decisions rather than just like, well, because I think that we are told that an actor's lifestyle should be a specific type of way. And if it's not,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're the starving artist, you're just chilling, you're never going to make a lot of money, you're never going to do this, you're never going to do that. We've been told that, and we're like, but we really love doing this thing. So instead of saying, well, I guess if I can't live that lifestyle and it's not sustainable for me, I guess I won't do it at all. We're like, no, how can we do it that fits in our life? Like, what can we do that allows us to continue to do this? How can we? It's never been about the what. We've both always known, like, this is what we want to do,
Yeah.
but it's been about the how. And I think the more intentional time you spend with yourself, like you've spent all this time learning and understanding, I need nature. I need nature outside of me. I spent all this time learning and understanding, as much of an extrovert as I am, I actually think I need my own space to be able to really get to that like new height of understanding and creativity and X, Y, and Z. And it has nothing to do with anything else. It's just I'm ready for that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
intentional time spent and just experience overall.
Did you sit down and actually ask yourself those questions, or are these things that you kind of happened upon?
I Here's the thing about me that is a catch 22. I feel like I people think I'm impulsive. I'm
Hmm.
actually not at all. I'm very introspective with what I'm thinking about, and oftentimes like only a few core people will know my every thought. Like literally, like Kaylee knows my every thought probably all day every day because I'm constantly word vomiting. What about this? What about this idea for this and that? And like that's how I work. It takes me a while to like make decisions, but at the same time, I'm also a very gut driven person. And if something
Hmm.
feels right and I can logistically see things, and even if it's going to be a little challenge, I can believe in myself to achieve whatever it is that I've been thinking about. I think that it's a combination of being doing a lot of research, being a research rat, and then also just going with my gut intuition feeling and trusting that no matter what happens on the other side, I will figure it out. Because if there's one thing I've been able to do with everything in my life, it's always been figure it the fuck out, even if it took a
Yeah.
little longer than I thought. Even with
Yeah.
business, like I basically took like a hiatus from like announcing anything, talking about coaching or anything like that for the entirety of 2021. I just stuck with the clients I had and that was it. I didn't really, and then I was like, no, I still really want to do this. So I just like was like, okay, what's a different direction I can go in to what I've been doing now? Because obviously what I've been doing now isn't working.
Hmm. Yeah. That is definitely one thing anytime I think about you, I think you have figured everything, and you figured so many like multifaceted different things out.
So random.
You
Well,
know,
that's
renovated a
when I decide
van
I'm going
and
to do
you,
something, I'm going to do it. Honestly, I used
yes.
to be
Yeah.
very vocal about the things I'm going to do. I'm less vocal about it now because I'd rather talk about it when it's done,
Yeah.
than to just blast it out. But that is that has always been a component of my personality. I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know where I got it from. Probably my dad telling me that I could literally do anything I wanted in my
Mm.
life, which, I could never repay him enough. But
There's a little bit of that watch me attitude, which I think is really actually helpful, right? Is like,
yeah.
somebody questions oh, you're an actor. Oh, I acted in high school. That's so cute, you know? And, or
Uh,
like, how are you ever going to sustain yourself doing that? And I think having this kind of, there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, like,
it's
oh,
delusional.
really?
It's
Watch me.
literally, well, it's a bit delusional. I was listening to
Yeah.
another podcast yesterday. Um, Sean James, who I just discovered on Sam's podcast, One Broke Actress, he was talking about like how one of the things you have to kind of possess as someone who is going to pursue something as hard as acting, as hard as business ownership. There are much easier ways to make money. This is not
Oh,
the
yeah.
easiest way to make money
100%.
or build a life. We are not, it's not about that. There are easier
Yeah.
ways to do this, but like the component that most people who are really pursuing it with their whole ass is this just like delusion that they have what it takes. They have what it takes to do
Yeah.
it. And if you don't have that, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard to sustain because that
100%.
delusion is going to be like, well, if that fucking person who's never been discovered before ever could do it, why couldn't I? Instead of,
Yeah.
well, that person got really lucky. I'll never get that lucky.
Hmm.
A
I
totally
think
different mindset.
one of the most toxic concepts in our society, in my opinion, is the idea that comfort and happiness are the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Being in this mode of I must be comfortable to be happy, or if I'm uncomfortable, then I am unhappy is
Yeah.
so wrong. It's not
I
true.
agree. I agree.
Um, and I think being delusional, right, which we all are to a certain extent, um, is in many ways just an acknowledgement that I can be happy and uncomfortable simultaneously. In fact, sometimes I'm happiest when I am in moments of discomfort, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I am most unhappy, perhaps, when I am super comfortable. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean,
Agreed.
that's not safety. Safety is different, right? It's
Agreed.
one of the reasons why you and I are uh, business owners in multiple careers. So we have parallel careers
Yeah.
uh, because we need, to a certain extent, the safety net of, oh, I obviously need money to live a life and, be able to have a roof over my head.
And
And
eat
sometimes as an
food.
actor, and eat food, I don't know where that's coming from. So if I have multiple streams of income, it's a much safer bet, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I just think if we can get away from this concept that being comfortable means we will be happy, sometimes, sure. I'm sure there
Yeah.
are some people who are, you know, very happy being in a very comfortable situation. I don't think you and I are like that.
No, I actually resonate deeply with you saying that oftentimes you are unhappy when you're comfortable. I think that part of that feels a little bit like it should be explored in therapy a little bit. But on the flip side, I think that, and this, I'm still trying to figure out what it is exactly that makes me happy, but
Hmm.
I think that the times when I've noticed or can think of being the happiest, it's when I've come out on the other side of something that was insanely uncomfortable, better, stronger, faster, like more equipped than I was before. And so I think I'm the happiest when I'm growing. I'm the
Hmm.
happiest when I'm surrounded by people who desire growth as well. And I'm happiest around my dog, if I'm going to be honest. I'm the safest and
Yeah,
happiest around my dog, even though he's annoying sometimes. But yeah, I'm
I
still
get
trying to
that.
learn. I'm still trying to understand, but I can definitely say that it's hard for me to be comfortable because I if I'm comfortable, I don't feel like I'm growing. But
Hmm.
we also, as people who tend to try to optimize every moment of life, sometimes being comfortable is part of the process. Like moments of comfort should be reveled in instead of like, oh my God, I'm comfortable, something's wrong, you know,
Yeah,
which is what happens to me when I'm like trying to rest and watch TV for a whole day or something like that. And I'm like, oh God, I'm wasting time, I'm wasting energy, whatever. But I totally agree with you. I think,
I'm so bad about that.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but
Yeah.
even just taking one day off a week is so helpful, you know, and it's so cool that you have like 2 to 3 days off per week. And that is, I mean, honestly, the dream is to work, do all the work that you love, do work less for more, you know? Like,
Right. Well, and reminding yourself that when you have two careers, they aren't days off. I felt really guilty when I
yeah,
shifted my schedule to be this way, right?
yeah,
Because I started telling clients, hey, I only have this available, right? And but I felt really guilty until I forget who it was. Somebody stopped me and was like, wait a second, Ryan, tell me what you're doing on those other days. I was like, well, one of those days I'm basically just like sleeping because I'm so tired. The other 2 days, I'm self-taping, I'm
mm-hmm,
learning,
mm-hmm,
material for auditions, I'm taking voice lessons, I'm networking, I am writing programs even for
right,
clients, right? They are not days off. They are just days off from that part of my life,
right,
right?
yeah,
And so I don't know. I think artists particularly have a propensity to say like, oh, if I'm not making money, I'm not working,
yeah.
which is not true.
Couldn't agree more. Yep. You are an actor, artist, whatever you are, whether you are on set, on stage, whatever. I say that all the time because it's fucking true.
Hmm.
We're doing so much work, even just living your life to be able to
Yeah.
pursue the career. So that kind of brings me to my last thing that I'd like to ask you.
Mm.
And I want to know what is something that you would, as cliche as it is, what is something that you would tell Ryan 10, 15 years ago, younger self Ryan? What would
Mm.
you tell him? What would you share with him that would help him?
That's a really good question. Um, Chill the fuck out. You're gonna be okay. Um, I would say that the life that you don't think you can have is possible. It's going to take a shit ton of work. It is not going to be guaranteed at all points. You may have to adjust. But if you have a concept that, hey, I want to live in the woods, be a working actor, have my own business all at the same time, you can do that. It may not look exactly the way that you think it will, you know, but you can do that. If you want to figure out a way for you to be bi-coastal, whatever your dream is, that is maybe non-traditional, right? Even within the artist world, they're a world that is full of non-traditional human beings. All of us live very unusual lives.
Mhm.
But I think there are still, you mentioned it earlier, there are still certain molds that we are told we have to be in, right? You've got to be the starving actor who has to be, like waiting tables, waiting for some big project to come along, or you've got to be, you know, uh, either all in or all out, right? I hate when people say, uh, "Oh, if you can picture yourself doing anything else, go do it."
Ah, same.
You
It's
know,
one of
you
my
know
biggest
how
pet
we were told
peeves.
that growing up.
Yes.
Um, I can picture myself doing a ton of things. This is
Yeah,
just what I love the most
correct.
at this point in my life. If will it change? Maybe. 20 years down the road, my priorities might be different, and that's okay. Um, but yeah, I think I would just say that all of those dreams that you have, they are possible, but you are going to have to start working for them now,
Yeah.
which is what I did, you know. And um and don't look 5 days in advance. Don't look 6 months in advance. Start looking 5 years in advance. right? You got to play the long game. It's like, um, you know, progressive overload,
Yep.
right? We don't add in 50% increase, right?
Right away.
A
No.
week right away. We're going to work in little 5-10% increases. And over time, that compounds to progress.
Yep.
So if you start looking at your whole life that way, okay, I was working 7 days a week for many years. Maybe I can now start working 6 days a week,
Mm.
right? Let me take one day off. Now, can I move it to 5 days a week, 4 days a week, right? Those things are possible. You just have to, uh, you know, put in those little steps day after day after day, and you'll get there. So I think that would probably be the biggest affirmation, because as you know, this is the reason why you and I think one of the reasons, one of the many reasons you and I get along so well. We're both dreamers.
Yeah.
We have big ideas, right? And we are also eternal optimists, which I love. Um, yeah, sometimes to, a crazy extent, but we've got these massive ideas, and I think it's so easy to sometimes let go of those big ideas as being too big. They're
Hmm.
not too big. You just have to break them down into small. What are you going to do day in and day out to get yourself closer to that? I think that would be the biggest reminder that I would give myself. That young kid getting off the plane from, I think I was coming from North Carolina when I moved to New York because I was doing a
That's
show down
wild.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Was it that Little Mermaid? Was that Little Mermaid?
yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
guess what? So I did that show, and then the next year I did the same show, or not the same show, a different show with the same director. That was, oh my God, that was a long time ago. Uh, haven't worked with that director since. I'm about to go work with that same director this summer.
Seeds are
It
planted.
comes back
Seeds
around.
are planted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it comes back around.
Wow. No, I love all of that. Thank you for sharing that. And I have no doubt that not only me, but someone out there is going to hear that and take it to heart and really be able to utilize that in whatever it is that they're working on in their life, whether that is a creative career or that's something else. That step by step mentality is so important. So I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing just your insight. I feel like again we could talk about this stuff for a really long time, but I don't want to get too deep into the hour and a half 2 hour zone on the podcast. But
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um gosh, it's so great to have you in my bubble, and I hope that that never goes away. I don't see why it would. We've been across the country for many years now, and we still keep in touch. And I love every time I get to chat with you and catch up. And I'm so proud of everything that you're doing, everything you're going to continue to do. And I'm just happy to be a small little part of it along the way. So it's super cool to watch all of that.
It is always my pleasure. I really appreciate you having me. And I think we're gonna have to do some more collaborations in
I
the
agree.
future. I
We've
we
tried. We've
used to
tried.
we used to do them all the time. We would like teach classes
I
together,
think
or
we had some life to live, you know?
I think
And I
so.
think that
Yes,
we needed to get to a point where we could I think we needed to build our own things so that we could then eventually bring the empires together and do something meaningful and
100%.
special. So, yeah, it is first of all, this is definitely not the last time you'll be on the podcast, but it's definitely not the last time that anybody will be hearing from us as a collaborative partnership either. So, I'm looking forward to whatever comes down the line on that.
We'll figure something out for
Yeah,
sure. Maybe I can get you back out to do Fight with Your Art at some point. That'd be cool.
I would love that. Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate you.
All right. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Booked and Balanced podcast and checking out Ryan's episode. I really hope that you were able to get some amazing insight from him. I know that I personally love his perspective on the long game and really just trying to take up more space in this world. So I hope that that hit home for you like it hit home for me. If you want to follow more of Ryan's content, you can find him over on Instagram at Ryan Alexander Jacobs, or you could also pop over to his fitness page. He's at Ascent Fitness Training, which is ASCENT Fitness Training. If you are someone who's looking for a fitness coach and you would prefer a male coach, not a female coach like me, check Ryan out. I would always recommend Ryan as a coach as well. But otherwise, if you liked this podcast as a whole, please do not hesitate to give it a share. Share it to your Instagram stories, tag me in them so I can see how you're liking the podcast. And if you're feeling really generous, please go ahead and give us a 5-star and leave a review. It would really mean a lot to me. It helps me reach more creatives than you will ever know. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to putting up the next episode for y'all. And until next time, I will see ya on the next one.